That is, whenever a pathogen enters the body, it will always encounter the innate immunity barriers. So, let's discuss about the 4 barriers of innate immunity. They are physical barriers, physiological barriers, cellular barriers, and cytokine barriers. So, coming to the physical barriers. So, physical barriers include the skin and the mucous membrane. So, the skin is made up of several layers. So, this offers as a protection. Also, several organs of the body are lined by a mucous membrane. And this mucous membrane also offers protection. Now coming to the physiological barriers. So physiology means the study of life processes and the functioning of the body. So physiological barriers will include hydrochloric acid. So hydrochloric acid present in the stomach, apart from helping in killing germs and pathogens, will also help in digestion. Then we have fever. So pathogens cannot survive in extremely high temperatures. That is why the body raises its temperature in order to kill those pathogens present. Now we come to the cellular barriers. So cellular barriers will include macrophages. So macrophages are a kind of cells. And so what do these cells do? They help in engulfing or digesting the foreign matter, debris, degenerated cells of the body, etc. So whenever a pathogen has entered the body, the macrophages will engulf that particular pathogen. And then at last, we have the cytokine barriers. So cytokine barriers or cytokines, these are specific chemicals which are released by the infected cells. The infected cells, let's say a cell is infected by a virus, will secrete substances. For example, interferons. So these interferons is detected by other cells of the body and will activate the acquired immune system of the body. So I hope this is clear. Now we move on to acquired immunity. So acquired immunity is thing that is bringing about immunity. So acquired immunity again can be classified into 2 types. It is classified into cell-mediated immunity immunity. So humor means any body fluid. So here we talk about the immune cells which are present in the body fluids such as the lymph and the blood. Cell-mediated immunity is brought about by specific kinds of WBCs called T lymphocytes. Humoral immunity is brought about by B lymphocytes. This was a brief introduction to innate and acquired immunity. So now I'm going to say what actually happens when a pathogen has entered the body. So when the pathogen has entered the body, the macrophages of the innate immunity will detect it. And will engulf it. Now after this has happened, some of the macrophages will alert the T lymphocytes. Of the T lymphocytes will proliferate and increase in number and will kill other pathogens which may be present in different parts of the body, and some of them will help in creating an antibody. So an antibody is basically a response to a pathogen. Then some of the T lymphocytes will alert the B lymphocytes. They will kill. But the main function of B lymphocytes is to bring about a secondary response. So when this has happened, the B lymphocytes and the T lymphocytes will produce an antibody. So an antibody is a response to an antigen. An antigen is present in the pathogens. So we can say that antigen is anything that triggers the production of an antibody. When the pathogen has been killed and completely removed from the body. So the body has to be prepared in case the same pathogen comes the second time. So the second time when the pathogen encounters, the body is prepared because of antibody. So T lymphocytes have specific kind of cells called T memory cells. And these memory cells will remember the kind of response for each kind of pathogen. So when the second time, when the same pathogen enters the body is able to give out a very drastic response because it already has encountered the pathogen. And it is able to give this secondary response with the help of B lymphocytes and the T memory cells. So the number of B lymphocytes and T memory cells will be more during the secondary response. So it is always said that the secondary response is of very high intensity. Right. So now we come to another topic of the same, that is the lymphoid organs. Organs present in the body. The lymphoid organs are those organs which are associated with the lymphatic system of the body. So lymph is another kind of body fluid. So lymphoid organs are associated with the immune system. So we have primary lymphoid organs and secondary lymphoid organs. Okay, so primary lymphoid organs. So in the primary lymphoid organs, the formation of the lymphocytes takes place. Bone marrow, thymus. And we have the secondary lymphoid organs. So in the secondary lymphoid organs, the activation of the cells takes place. Maturation. So this will include the spleen and the lymph nodes. Now the T in the T lymphocytes stands for thymus because the maturation of the lymphocytes takes place in a small organ present in the body, which is the thymus. Similarly, the B in B lymphocytes stands for bone marrow because the formation and the maturation of the B lymphocytes takes place here. topic of immunity, that is, we can have two kinds of immunity again, that is active immunity and passive immunity. So active immunity is developed in the body whenever a person comes in contact with the pathogen by direct or indirect methods. So when the person comes in contact with the pathogen, he or she is prepared for the second time. So this can be either catching the particular disease or through vaccination. So in any kind of vaccination, they put the degenerated form of the pathogen in the body. So the body is able to fight those pathogens, create an antibody, and thus we are immune when the pathogen enters the body for the second time. For example, this can take place for, let's say, chickenpox and other kind of diseases. Now, passive immunity. So, passive immunity, when the immunity has been acquired by indirect or direct methods. So, there are two main prominent, very important examples. The first being, the fetus. The fetus obtains nourishment through in the mother's body through a structure called the placenta. So apart from providing the fetus nourishment and all, this placenta also provides immunity to the fetus. So IgG. So there are several kinds of antibodies which are present. The two most prominent kinds of antibodies are IgG. So IgG is immunoagglutination. G stands for gamma chain. And this is one of the most abundant antibodies present in the body. So this IgG antibody is passed on to the fetus through the placenta. Similarly, when a baby is born, through the mother's milk, IgA, A stands for alpha chain, is conferred through the mother's milk to the newborn baby. So the mother's milk contains a fluid called colostrum. Contain the IgA antibody, and thus we can say that this is an example of passive immunity. Now, moving on to vaccination. So we already discussed vaccination is a way of preventing a particular pathogen from infecting us. So vaccination can be of three types. First would be the first generation vaccine. Second is the second generation vaccine. The last one is the third generation vaccine. When generation vaccine, so this will include the dead or the weakened form of a pathogen. Would include the smallpox vaccine, polio, etc. Then we'll go to the second generation vaccine. So second generation vaccine is made or utilized using certain toxins. So toxins which have been extracted from the particular pathogen. So this second generation vaccine is used in diphtheria, pertussis, tetanus, which is the DPT vaccine, DPT, and it will also be applicable for hepatitis B disease. Next, we come to third generation vaccine. Now, the third generation vaccine is the most widely accepted nowadays because it is cheap, because it is also very efficient in conferring immunity against several diseases. So this makes use of DNA technology. You are using the genetic material of the pathogens to make this vaccine, and this vaccine has proved to be very useful. The first generation and the second generation vaccines are also helpful, but they involve a lot of risk. So since if we inject a dead or weakened form of pathogen, there's a chance that the pathogen gets activated inside the body and will cause harm. So the most accepted kind of vaccine is the third generation vaccine. So now we have finished the main part of this topic, which is immunity. And now I'll be discussing some important points. The first thing is allergy. Allergy is a disastrous or a response of the immune system. So sometimes when the body comes in contact with any kind of stuff, it may produce a very disastrous or a very hypersensitive response towards it. And that is what we say we are allergic to a particular substance. Response is produced by the mast cells of the body. So mast cells, again a particular kind of cells of the body. So they will release substances like histamine and serotonin. Also, histamine is mainly released during asthma. So we consider asthma is a kind of allergic response of the immune system. And then we have an autoimmune disease. Know that the immune system is very well efficient to differentiate cells from non-self cells because of specific kind of receptors present. Now, when sometimes due to any kind of disorder, any kind of genetic problems, when the body's immune cells are not able to identify or distinguish self from non-self, they in turn kill the body cells, thinking that these are the foreign substances of the body. So examples of such disease would include rheumatoid arthritis. The topic of immunity. And now we'll be moving on to discuss about drug abuse. Which has a clinical or a medical use. People misuse these drugs for obtaining pleasure or for trying to combat insomnia or any kind of other problems, then it is termed as drug abuse. So non-clinical use of drugs is called drug abuse. So there are various kinds of drugs which are misused by people. So the first one is opioid. Most of these drugs which I'm going to talk about affect the nervous system of the body. So when we talk about opioids, so these have been extracted from the plant Opium poppy. Scientific name of opium poppy is Papaver somniferum. Papaver somniferum. So this opioid has a kind of drug which is morphine. Now morphine is actually a plain painkiller which is given to people who have just undergone surgery. So this has a clinical use. But when this morphine is misused to obtain pleasure or any other kind of non-clinical use, it is a drug abuse. So again, so a form of morphine. So this morphine is misused. So when this morphine is added with an acetyl group, it will form a drug called heroin. So heroin is obtained with the acetylation of morphine. Is a CNS suppressant. It will slow down the body functions in order to provide some kind of pleasure or a feeling of calmness. It's about heroin. Then we talk about barbiturates. Benzodiazepines. Complicated, but these basically stand for sleeping pills. These are nothing but the sleeping pills. So what do? They provide us a sense of sleepiness. They basically soothe us and slow down the body functions. Body functions ultimately producing sleep. So these are termed to be the CNS, that is central nervous system depressants, because they are causing us sleep. These are another kind of drug. And then we have cannabinoids. So this drug has been extracted from cannabis sativa. Is also obtained to provide temporary pleasure to the person. However, it actually damages the cardiovascular system and causes many kinds of cardiovascular or heart-related diseases. This is a very important point. Killer diseases, right? And then we come to stimulants. So stimulants will include those. So in all of these drugs, we have seen that they either provide us pleasure, or they act as CNS suppressants or depressants. But these stimulants will actually perform the opposite function. They will stimulate the nervous system. Stimulate the nervous system, make a person feel more excited or very active or very hyperactive. So this is done by examples of these drugs will include cocaine, vitamins, caffeine. So when caffeine is taken in very large amounts, it acts as it causes us a lot of let's say cardiovascular diseases as well. So repeated use of such drugs can again affect the cardiovascular system as well as the nervous system of the body. So of which an important point, so cocaine is obtained from the plant Erythroxylum coca. When a person is repeatedly using cocaine, it will also act as a hallucinogen. So the person is not, the person hallucinates and is not able to distinguish or come back to reality. So this is it. So now the most important thing about learning about drugs is from which plant it is extracted from, and also what kind of effects does it have. So the most important point is cannabinoids will cause us cardiovascular diseases. So this was about drugs. So an important thing, drugs will also include tobacco. Tobacco has been used in India for about 400 years. So tobacco has various effects on the pulmonary system or the respiratory system of the body. So repeated use of tobacco will first of all increase the carbon monoxide content in the blood. It will also reduce oxygen affinity, hemoglobin, which is the respiratory pigment. So several harmful effects of tobacco abuse can include causing lung cancer, oral cancer, etc. So when we smoke tobacco or when we smoke, it will actually destroy the cilia or fine hair-like structures which are present in our throat and the tubes of the respiratory system. These cilia are very important as they help in filtering the dust particles. So that is why it can lead to several kinds of heart diseases as well. We are also done with drugs. So next, I will move on to the last topic, which is diseases. So this is a very easy topic. It requires general information on the common kinds of diseases, the kinds of symptoms they cause, or the kind of pathogen which is responsible. So we are going to be discussing about only some kind of diseases. The first one is typhoid. Typhoid, it is caused by a bacteria that is Salmonella typhi, and it is a disease which is affecting the alimentary canal or the stomach and the intestine of the body. So certain symptoms will include frequent stools, loss of appetite, in very extreme cases, it may also lead to death. So lead to death. Frequent kind of question which is framed from this disease is the kind of test that is performed in order to confirm the presence of typhoid in an individual. So the answer would be the Vidal test. So the Vidal test is performed in order to confirm that this particular human is suffering from typhoid. These were the important points regarding typhoid. And now, this is a bacterial disease, so this can be cured by taking in antibiotics. Now, coming to cholera. So cholera is another disease which is caused by bacteria. It is very similar to typhoid because it is caused due to a consumption of contaminated food and water. This is caused by the bacteria Vibrio cholerae. It is not very important to remember the name of the pathogen, but we must be familiar with the important symptoms and obviously the things. Vibrio cholerae, this is again affecting the alimentary canal. So some of the very important symptoms include first being white, rice water-like frequent stools. Any kind of particular test like typhoid which is performed to detect cholera, but microscopic examination of stools and vomit can be considered as a diagnostic test for cholera. So caused by bacteria. One of the major kinds of bacteria that causes it is Streptococcus pneumonia. Pneumonia is affecting the respiratory system. So it will lead to cough, inflammation of the respiratory membrane, the functional units present in the lungs. These are balloon-like structures and are actually responsible for gaseous exchange in the lungs. Okay, so due to pneumonia, mucus, the alveoli gets filled with the mucus, which leads to difficulty in breathing. Breathing is an important symptom of this particular disease. These were bacterial diseases. Now we'll come to viral disease. So a very common viral disease which is not very harmful, it is common cold. So common cold is mostly acquired very frequently, and another name of common cold is rhinitis because it is caused by a rhinovirus. Common cold is not a very life-threatening kind of disease. Now why is this so? Because this rhinovirus affects the upper respiratory tract. Now the upper respiratory tract includes the nose. So this will not affect it will affect the lungs. It will affect the nose and the throat, but not the lungs. So that is why it is not a very life-threatening disease. It only stays for about 3 to 7 days. The common symptoms will include sore throat, runny nose, it can be weakness, common cold and rhinitis. Next, we also have this is a very common viral disease which is important. Then we'll talk about the diseases which is caused by other organism that is not a virus or a bacteria. This will include diseases like malaria. So we're going to be discussing malaria. Disease. So it is caused by the pathogen Plasmodium vivax. There are many species of malaria, but this is one of the most common species of malaria. So this Plasmodium vivax, it is carried through a kind of vector. So the vector here would be the mosquito. So the mosquito will carry this Plasmodium vivax. So when Plasmodium vivax enters the body, it will rapidly multiply. And because of this multiplication that is taking place inside the body, we observe symptoms or such as first would be tertian fever. This is an important feature of malaria. So benign tertian fever, it is a fever that reoccurs every 3 days. This is termed to be very harmful. So in some extreme cases, the malaria will also result in destruction of the RBCs or the red blood cells of the body. So this was the entire chapter. So these were the important points of the chapters. Now before ending, I would like to teach two more very important, these are very small points. These are about two diseases. The first being cancer and the second being AIDS. So we're going to be doing the important points of these two diseases. So obviously cancer, it is caused by a group of cancer occurs when any kind of gene, so there's a kind of gene present in the body which is an oncogene. So when this oncogene, it is actually present in an inexpressible form. So when due to any kind of causative factors, it starts expressing itself. What happens is that certain cells of the body, they will not obey the basic rules of cell division and will start rapidly multiplying. So when oncogene expresses itself, several cells of the body, now termed as tumor cells or cancerous cells, so they will keep dividing rapidly. So cancer, one of the important points is that cancer cells are immortal cells. They keep on dividing. They will not wait for any kind of signal to stop. And so because they rapidly keep on dividing, they will start fighting with the good cells or the unaffected cells of the body and will deprive those cells of nutrients. So cancer is one of the very dangerous diseases, and it most of the chances it leads to death. A frequent question that might be asked or is asked usually in the last few years was cancer cells exhibit contact inhibition. So this is an important point. So contact inhibition is, so when some cells of the body are dividing, they keep on dividing. But when they increase the numbers and they come closer together, there are chances that they will compete with each other for nutrients. So what do? So the body in that case will send certain signals called the stop signals, so that they will avoid contact inhibition, because when contact inhibition takes place, certain cells, the cells of the body, will die. So the body will release stop signal so that all the cells will stop dividing. And so now, because cancerous cells are continuously dividing cells, they will keep on dividing, and will not accept any signals. They will only listen to themselves, and that is why they do not possess contact inhibition. Then the last topic, which is AIDS. So AIDS is again very infectious disease. An infectious disease, it is spread through cases like sexual contact with the infected person or through blood transfusion. So sometimes in some statements they give that if a person shakes hand or hugs a AIDS infected person, then will that person get AIDS or get infected with HIV or not? So the answer is no. So AIDS will only spread when sexual contact or when blood is involved. So when blood is involved, then only the HIV virus will spread from one organism to the other. Immunodeficiency virus. And this human immunodeficiency virus is a group of retroviruses. So what does it actually do? It will change the human DNA in such a way that it will alter humans' DNA, and that is how many kinds of HIV are produced in the body. So these cells will again keep on killing the lymphocytes. So we discussed about the T lymphocytes at the starting of the session. So these T lymphocytes are killed because of HIV. So because the number of T cells keeps on reducing, the body's immune system has become very weak, such that the body is not able to fight even a common cold. So that in that case, a common cold becomes very life-threatening for that particular individual. That is why we say that AIDS eventually leads to death, and there has been no cure for AIDS. Cure found for AIDS. Important point, it will be the confirmatory test for the presence of AIDS. So this will be ELISA test, lot test, PCR test. These were the important points regarding AIDS. So with this, we have covered human health and diseases. And if you revise these important points, then you will be able to solve any kind